Every generation that walks across the stage of history receives something sacred. It may not arrive wrapped in gold. It may not be announced with trumpets, but it is placed quietly into the hands of ordinary people with extraordinary responsibility. The generations before us fought battles we never saw, endured struggles we never felt, and carried burdens we never had to carry, so that something valuable could be passed forward. They passed forward truth. They passed forward faith. They passed forward the courage to stand when standing was not easy. Think about it for a moment. The freedom you experience today was not created yesterday. Someone paid for it. Someone sacrificed for it. Someone believed strongly enough to defend it when everything around them said it would be easier to surrender. And now that gift has reached our hands, every generation becomes a bridge between the past and the future. What we received from those before us must not stop with us. It must travel through us. The question is not whether the previous generation gave us something meaningful. They did. The question is what we will do with it now that it belongs to us. Because history shows a dangerous pattern. A generation rises that values truth, that honors faith, that builds families and communities on strong foundations. But then another generation comes along that begins to treat those same things as if they are optional, as if they are outdated, as if they can be set aside without consequence. And slowly, quietly, what was once protected begins to disappear. Values do not vanish overnight. Faith does not disappear in a single moment. What happens is far more subtle. It happens when people stop defending what matters. It happens when conviction becomes convenience. It happens when comfort becomes more important than character. And that is why the responsibility of a generation is so powerful. What you protect today will shape the world your children live in tomorrow. If you guard truth, the next generation will grow up knowing what is right. If you guard faith, the next generation will grow up with hope stronger than fear. If you guard courage, the next generation will believe that standing strong is possible even when the pressure is heavy. But if a generation becomes careless with what it has received, the loss is greater than they realize. Because when truth is neglected, confusion rises. When faith is abandoned, fear grows stronger. When courage is ignored, compromise begins to control the future. That is why this moment matters so much. You are not just living your life. You are holding something that was placed in your hands by those who came before you. The strength they carried, the principles they defended, the belief they refused to abandon, all of it has now reached your generation. And the world will watch to see what happens next. Will this generation protect what it has received, or will it allow the pressures of the moment to weaken what took decades to build? Because every generation must answer the same question in its own time. The generation before us answered it with sacrifice. Now history is waiting to see how we will answer it with responsibility. And as soon as you begin to hold tightly to what you believe, life will begin to test it. Not gently, not occasionally, but with moments that press against your convictions and force you to decide what truly lives in your heart. Anyone can speak about faith when the skies are clear and the road is smooth. Anyone can talk about courage when the crowd is cheering and the outcome is certain. But life does not measure your beliefs in calm moments. Life measures them in the storm. There will come a day when everything around you seems to question what you stand for. A difficult situation will rise when doing what is right feels heavier than doing what is easy. The pressure will not always come as an obvious enemy. Sometimes it comes as quiet doubt. Sometimes it comes through disappointment. Sometimes it arrives in the form of voices telling you that holding on to your principles is no longer worth the struggle. And in that moment the test begins. The test of life is not designed to destroy you. It is designed to reveal you. It shows you whether the values you speak about are truly rooted in your heart, or simply words that sounded good when the sun was shining. Because when challenges come, the difference between belief and convenience becomes clear. Storms have a way of exposing foundations. When the winds begin to blow, weak structures collapse, but strong foundations stand firm. The same thing happens in life. When pressure arrives, people discover whether their faith is built on temporary emotion or on unshakable conviction. You may face moments when the path forward looks uncertain. A door may close that you prayed would open. A struggle may appear that you never expected to fight. Circumstances may rise that shake your confidence and whisper that everything you believed is pointless. But that is the exact moment when faith proves its strength. Faith that survives only in comfort is not faith at all. True faith survives the fire. True conviction grows stronger when opposition appears. When difficulty rises, it forces you to reach deeper into the beliefs that define who you are. And those who refuse to surrender during those moments discover something powerful about themselves. They discover that storms do not destroy purpose, they refine it. Challenges do not erase belief, they strengthen it. Pressure does not silence courage, it reveals it. Life's greatest tests often arrive disguised as setbacks, but hidden inside them is an opportunity to prove that what you carry inside your heart cannot be shaken by circumstances. When the storm passes, and it always does, you will look back and realize that the very moment meant to break, you became the moment that built you stronger than before. Because the strength of a person is never measured by how loudly they speak about their beliefs. It is measured by how firmly they stand when life demands proof of them. And when those tests arrive, something deeper begins to happen within you, because difficult moments have a way of uncovering the true strength of a person. Anyone can appear strong when circumstances are favorable. Anyone can speak confidently when success is close and the road ahead looks bright. But the real measure of a person is not found in comfort, it is revealed in pressure. Hardship has a way of pulling the curtain back on character. When life becomes difficult, masks begin to fall away, the applause disappears, the encouragement fades, and suddenly the only thing left standing is what truly lives inside your heart. That is the moment when character begins to speak louder than words. Character is not built in a single day, and it is certainly not proven in easy seasons. It is forged slowly, through choices that many people never see. It is built when a person decides to stand for truth, even when no one is watching. It is built when integrity becomes more valuable than popularity. It is built when doing the right thing costs more than doing the convenient thing, because there will always be moments when compromise seems easier. A shortcut will appear. A voice will whisper that bending your principles just a little will solve the problem faster. And for a moment, the temptation will look reasonable. It will look harmless. It will even look practical. But character refuses to bow to that pressure. Character understands that the easy road often leads to regret, while the difficult road leads to strength. It knows that a moment of compromise can damage what took years to build. And so, the person with strong character stands firm, even when that decision brings criticism, isolation, or misunderstanding. History is filled with individuals who faced that very choice. They could have surrendered their principles and avoided conflict. They could have remained silent and protected their comfort, but instead they chose the harder path. They chose to stand when standing cost them something, and because they did, their lives became a testimony that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. The truth is that pressure does not create character, it reveals it. When the storm intensifies, the roots of your convictions either hold you steady or expose how shallow they were. That is why difficult seasons are so important. They show you what your life is truly built upon. A person of strong character does not wait for approval from the crowd. Their decisions are not controlled by shifting opinions or temporary emotions. Their strength comes from a deeper place, a place where truth matters more than applause and integrity matters more than comfort. And when someone learns to stand firm in those moments, something powerful begins to happen. Confidence grows, courage deepens. The storms that once looked terrifying begin to lose their power. Because a person who has proven their character in difficulty discovers that no challenge can easily shake the foundation they have built within their soul. And while you are standing firm, something else begins to happen around you. The world rarely applauds conviction for long. In fact, the moment you decide to hold tightly to truth, another force begins to push in the opposite direction. The world has a quiet but persistent way of encouraging compromise. It does not always come loudly or aggressively. Most of the time it arrives softly, almost reasonably. A voice begins to whisper that holding on to your values is unnecessary in a modern world. Another voice suggests that truth should be adjusted to fit the moment, and before long, what once seemed unshakable begins to feel negotiable. This is how compromise enters a life. It rarely begins with something dramatic. It starts with small decisions, tiny adjustments that appear harmless at first. A person begins to bend their convictions, just a little, to avoid criticism. They soften their stance to keep peace with the crowd. They trade principle for comfort, telling themselves that it is only temporary. But compromise has a way of growing. One small step away from truth leads to another step and then another. What once felt wrong begins to feel normal. What once seemed unthinkable begins to appear acceptable. Slowly, quietly, the standard that once guided a life begins to disappear. The world celebrates this kind of flexibility. It praises people who adapt their beliefs to whatever the moment demands. It rewards those who follow the direction of the crowd rather than the direction of their conscience. But history shows that a society that abandons truth eventually loses its sense of direction. Because truth is not designed to bend with every cultural wind that passes through the landscape of time. Truth stands firm. It remains steady even when opinions shift and trends rise and fall. The strength of truth is that it does not depend on popularity to remain powerful. Yet the pressure to compromise will always be there. There will be moments when holding on to your convictions will make you uncomfortable. There will be times when the majority moves in one direction, while your conscience pulls you in another. And standing in that moment may feel lonely, because the crowd often travels the wide road of convenience. But greatness has never been built on convenience. The men and women who changed the course of history were not the ones who adjusted their beliefs to satisfy the moment. They were the ones who refused to let truth be diluted. They stood firm when compromise looked attractive. They protected their values even when it cost them approval. And that is the quiet battle every person must face. The battle is not always against obvious enemies. Sometimes it is against the subtle pressure to surrender what you know is right. When a person learns to resist that pressure, something remarkable begins to happen. Their life becomes anchored. Their decisions become clear. They are no longer moved by every passing opinion because their foundation is rooted in something deeper than the approval of the crowd. And in a world constantly shifting its standards, a person who refuses to compromise becomes a rare and powerful example of what true strength really looks like. And when you look across the pages of history, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The people who shaped the future were not the ones who blended quietly into the crowd. They were the ones who refused to surrender their values when surrender seemed easier. Greatness has never belonged to the comfortable. It has always belonged to the courageous. There were moments when the world told them to step back, to remain silent, to adjust their convictions so they could live peacefully without conflict. The pressure was real, the opposition was strong, and standing firm often meant standing alone. But something inside them refused to bend. They understood that values are not decorations you wear when life is easy. Values are the foundation that holds you steady when everything else begins to shake. When the winds of criticism blow and the storms of opposition rise, the strength of your values becomes the anchor that keeps your life from drifting into confusion. Every great leader, every courageous voice, every person who left a mark on this world faced the same crossroads. On one side was the path of compromise, a road that promised acceptance, comfort, and fewer battles. On the other side was the path of conviction, a road that demanded courage and often brought resistance. Most people choose the easy road because it appears safe. It offers the comfort of belonging to the majority. But those who truly change the world choose the harder road. They choose the road where truth matters more than applause. There were times when the voices around them grew louder than their own. Critics questioned their decisions. Opponents tried to silence them. The pressure to conform surrounded them from every direction. Yet they continued to stand, not because it was popular, but because they understood something powerful about life. When you abandon your values to gain approval, you lose far more than you gain. Approval fades quickly. Popularity rises and falls like the tide. But integrity, once surrendered, leaves a wound that no applause can heal. The people who understood this truth held tightly to their principles, even when it cost them something. They paid the price of standing strong. Some lost opportunities, some lost recognition, some faced rejection and misunderstanding. But what they gained was something far greater than temporary acceptance. They gained the respect of history, because history does not remember those who followed the crowd. History remembers those who had the courage to walk in the opposite direction when truth demanded it. Their strength did not come from power or position. Their strength came from conviction. It came from the deep belief that some things in life are worth defending, even when the defense requires sacrifice. And when a person reaches that level of conviction, fear begins to lose its power. The opinions of the crowd no longer control their direction. Their steps are guided by something stronger than pressure, something deeper than popularity. They become unmovable. And when one person refuses to surrender their values, it often awakens courage in others. A single voice standing for truth can inspire 100 more to rise. A single life refusing to compromise can remind an entire generation that strength is not found in surrender, but in the unwavering decision to stand firm no matter how strong the winds become. And as you continue walking this road of conviction, you begin to realize something powerful about the direction of your life. The future you step into tomorrow is being shaped by the things you choose to protect today. Destiny is not created by accident. It is formed by the values you guard and the principles you refuse to abandon. Every person is protecting something. Some protect their reputation, some protect their comfort, some protect their position or their possessions. But the strongest lives are built by those who protect something deeper, something that cannot be measured by wealth or applause. When a person protects their integrity, they build a foundation that cannot easily be shaken. Integrity becomes the silent guardian of every decision they make. It guides their actions when nobody is watching. It keeps their path straight when shortcuts appear. And over time, that commitment to integrity shapes a life that others learn to trust. Integrity is not always convenient. In fact, there will be moments when protecting it costs you opportunities that looked promising. There will be situations where the easy road promises faster results. But a person who understands the power of integrity knows that temporary success is never worth permanent regret. The same is true with faith. When a person chooses to guard their faith, they are protecting the very source of their strength. Faith becomes the anchor that holds steady when life becomes uncertain. When disappointment appears and circumstances grow dark, faith reminds you that the story is not over. Without faith, fear begins to control the direction of a life. Doubt begins to whisper that the obstacles ahead are greater than the strength within. But when faith is protected, it becomes a light that refuses to be extinguished even in the darkest night. And then there is purpose. Every person is born with the ability to pursue something meaningful, something that reaches beyond their own comfort and touches the lives of others. But purpose must be protected, because distractions will always attempt to pull you away from it. The world offers countless detours. It offers temporary pleasures, empty recognition, and pursuits that promise satisfaction but deliver emptiness. If a person is not careful, they can spend years chasing things that never truly fulfill them. But when someone guards their purpose, they refuse to be distracted by what is temporary. They keep their focus on what is lasting. They understand that their life carries a calling greater than convenience. And slowly, as years begin to pass, the results of those decisions become clear. A life that protects integrity becomes respected. A life that protects faith becomes resilient. A life that protects purpose becomes meaningful. These choices may seem small in the moment. They may appear ordinary when you make them day after day, but over time they create a path that leads somewhere powerful. Because the direction of your destiny is not determined by what the world tries to take from you. It is determined by what you refuse to let go of. And when a person chooses to guard their faith and hold tightly to their convictions, something remarkable begins to grow inside them. It is not something the world can easily see at first, but it is powerful enough to transform the way they face every challenge in life. Faith and conviction create a strength that does not depend on circumstances. Most people draw their confidence from what they can see. When the path is clear and the future looks promising, they feel strong. When opportunities appear and success seems close, they move forward with boldness. But the moment uncertainty enters the picture, that confidence begins to fade. Faith changes that. Faith teaches a person to stand even when the evidence around them seems uncertain. It gives them the courage to keep walking when the road ahead disappears into darkness. While others become overwhelmed by fear, a person with faith remembers that storms do not last forever, and that every night eventually gives way to morning. Conviction strengthens that faith even further. Conviction is the deep-rooted belief that what you stand for is worth defending, no matter how difficult the circumstances become. It is the quiet voice inside that refuses to surrender even when the outside world grows loud with doubt. When faith and conviction work together, they build a spirit that becomes incredibly resilient. Challenges may still appear, hardships may still arrive, but those difficulties no longer carry the power to break a person's spirit. Instead of retreating in fear, they rise with determination. Instead of surrendering to discouragement, they hold on to hope. Their strength does not come from perfect conditions. It comes from a heart that refuses to stop believing. There will always be moments when fear attempts to enter your thoughts. Fear will tell you that the obstacle in front of you is too large. It will whisper that the future is uncertain and that the safest choice is to step back and avoid the struggle. But faith answers fear with courage. Faith reminds you that the strength within you is greater than the challenge in front of you. It reminds you that many of the greatest victories in history were achieved by people who refused to give up when circumstances looked impossible. And the more a person exercises that faith, the stronger it becomes. Each time they overcome doubt, their confidence grows deeper. Each time they stand firm against pressure, their conviction becomes more unshakable. Over time, they develop a spirit that cannot easily be defeated. Obstacles that once seemed overwhelming begin to look smaller. Problems that once caused fear begin to look like opportunities to grow stronger. This is the power that faith and conviction create inside a life. They build a strength that does not depend on applause, approval, or perfect conditions. They create a foundation so firm that even when the winds of difficulty begin to blow, the person standing on that foundation remains steady, confident, and unmovable. And as your faith grows stronger and your convictions become deeper, another truth becomes clear. Standing for what is right will always require courage. It is one thing to believe in truth quietly within your heart, but it is another thing entirely to stand for that truth when the world around you begins to move in the opposite direction. Courage is not always loud. It does not always appear with dramatic gestures or public recognition. Most of the time courage is quiet. It is the steady decision to remain faithful to what you know is right, even when the majority chooses another path. There will be moments when speaking the truth will make you uncomfortable. There will be situations where the crowd expects you to stay silent, to blend in, to agree with what everyone else has already accepted. The pressure in those moments can feel heavy because people naturally want to belong. They want approval. They want acceptance. But courage asks a different question. Courage asks whether acceptance is more valuable than integrity. It asks whether fitting in with the crowd is worth abandoning the truth that lives inside your heart. And when that moment arrives, every person must decide which voice they will follow. Throughout history, the individuals who made the greatest difference were rarely surrounded by large numbers of supporters at the beginning. Often they stood almost alone. Their ideas were questioned. Their convictions were challenged. Their courage was tested by opposition that tried to silence them. Yet they refused to retreat. They understood that truth does not need a majority to remain powerful. Truth does not gain its strength from how many people support it in a particular moment. Truth remains strong because it stands on a foundation that cannot be changed by shifting opinion. But standing for truth will sometimes invite criticism. There will be voices that mock your beliefs. There will be people who misunderstand your intentions. Some may even try to convince you that defending your values is unnecessary in a world that prefers comfort over conviction. This is where courage becomes essential. Courage is the strength that allows a person to step forward when fear is telling them to step back. It is the willingness to speak when silence would be easier. It is the determination to remain faithful to your principles even when the cost becomes uncomfortable. And the remarkable thing about courage is that it spreads. When one person stands for what is right, it gives others the strength to do the same. A single act of courage can awaken confidence in an entire room. One voice that refuses to compromise can remind many others that they are not alone. That is why standing for truth matters so deeply. It is not only about protecting your own convictions. It is about becoming an example that inspires others to rediscover their own courage. Because when people begin to see that it is possible to stand firm without surrendering, something powerful begins to rise within them. Fear begins to lose its control, doubt begins to fade, and suddenly the crowd that once remained silent begins to find its voice. All of it begins with one courageous decision. The decision to stand for what is right, even when the path is difficult, and the pressure to turn away feels overwhelming. And when you begin to understand the weight of your decisions, you realize that your life is never just about the present moment. Every choice you make today quietly reaches forward into the future. The actions you take, the values you defend, and the things you choose to keep or abandon will influence lives far beyond your own. No generation lives in isolation. What one generation protects becomes the inheritance of the next. What one generation neglects becomes the burden the next must struggle to restore. That is why the decisions made today carry a significance far greater than most people realize. A person may think that compromising their values affects only their own life, but the truth is far deeper than that. Children watch the choices of their parents. Communities observe the standards of their leaders. Young minds look for examples that will guide the direction of their own future. When a generation stands firmly for truth, it builds a foundation that the next generation can stand upon with confidence. It teaches them that integrity matters. It shows them that faith has power. It proves that courage can overcome fear. But when those same values are treated carelessly, confusion begins to grow. When truth is ignored, the next generation struggles to recognize it. When courage is absent, fear begins to shape decisions. And when purpose is forgotten, people begin to drift through life without direction. That is why your decisions today are never small. The way you respond to pressure becomes a lesson someone else will one day follow. The way you defend your convictions becomes a blueprint that others will study. Whether you realize it or not, your life is writing a message that future generations will read. Think about the people who shaped your own life. Perhaps it was someone who refused to give up when circumstances became difficult. Perhaps it was someone who stood firmly for what was right even when it cost them something. Their courage left an impression that time could not erase. In the same way, your choices will echo beyond the present moment. The strength you show today can inspire someone tomorrow. The faith you protect today can become the hope someone else depends on in the future. History moves forward because ordinary people decide to live with extraordinary conviction. They understand that the influence of their life does not end when the day is over. It continues through the people who learn from their example. That is why every decision carries weight. When you choose integrity over compromise, you strengthen the moral foundation of the future. When you choose faith over fear, you create a light that others can follow when their own path grows dark. The future is not built only by powerful leaders or famous voices. It is built quietly by individuals who decide, day after day, to protect what matters most and pass it forward with courage and responsibility. And when all the battles of life have been fought, when the storms have come and gone, when the pressure to surrender has knocked on your door again and again, one truth rises above everything else. Victory does not belong to the strongest, the richest, or the most popular. Victory belongs to those who refuse to let go of what truly matters. There will always be moments when giving up seems easier than holding on. Every person who has ever pursued something meaningful has faced that moment. The moment when the struggle feels too heavy. The moment when disappointment whispers that the effort is no longer worth the pain. The moment when the world seems to move forward while you feel like you are standing alone. That moment is where the difference between surrender and victory is decided. Many people begin their journey with passion and excitement. They speak boldly about their dreams, their purpose, and the values they want to protect. But when challenges rise, when obstacles appear that were never expected, some begin to loosen their grip. Slowly, they begin to let go of the very things they once promised to defend. But the people who ultimately rise above adversity are the ones who refuse to release their hold. They hold on to hope when circumstances try to replace it with despair. They hold on to faith when doubt surrounds them from every direction. They hold on to truth when the voices around them say that truth no longer matters. Holding on is not always easy. There will be nights when the road feels lonely. There will be days when the progress seems painfully slow. There will be seasons when everything around you appears uncertain. But strength grows in those moments. Each time you refuse to surrender, your spirit becomes stronger. Each time you choose persistence instead of retreat, your confidence grows deeper. Each time you stand firm while others give up, you move one step closer to the victory they will never experience. Because perseverance carries a power that many people underestimate. It is the quiet force that turns obstacles into stepping stones and setbacks into preparation for something greater. A person who refuses to quit becomes unstoppable, not because the journey is easy, but because their determination is stronger than the challenges in front of them. History has always honored those who endured. The individuals who achieved the greatest victories were rarely the ones who avoided hardship. They were the ones who walked through hardship and kept moving forward. They were knocked down, but they stood back up. They were discouraged, but they continued to believe. They were tested, but they refused to abandon what they knew was right. And over time, their perseverance produced something powerful. It produced a life that could not be defined by failure, a story that could not be erased by difficulty, and a victory that belonged only to those who had the courage to keep holding on when others let go. So now the question returns again, stronger than before, echoing through every part of your life. What you have been given, will you keep it? You have been given faith that can rise above fear. You have been given truth that can guide you when the world becomes confused. You have been given purpose that can push you forward when the road becomes difficult. Life will test it. The world will challenge it. There will be moments when letting go seems easier than standing strong. But the destiny of your life will always be determined by what you choose to hold on to when the pressure rises. Because every generation faces the same moment of decision. A moment when comfort asks you to compromise, when fear asks you to step back, and when doubt tries to convince you that standing firm is no longer worth it. But deep inside, there is a voice that reminds you that some things are too valuable to surrender. Integrity is too valuable. Faith is too powerful. Purpose is too important. And when a person decides that these things will never be abandoned, something incredible begins to happen. Their life becomes a light in the darkness. Their courage becomes a strength that others begin to follow. Their example becomes a message that echoes far beyond their own lifetime. The future will not belong to those who surrendered their convictions for comfort. The future will belong to those who protected what was right when it would have been easier to walk away. So hold on to what matters. Hold on when the storm begins to rise. Hold on when the voices of doubt grow louder. Hold on when the path feels lonely, because the story of your life will not be remembered for the moments when everything was easy. It will be remembered for the moment you made a decision that defined everything that followed, the moment you chose to stand firm, protect what was placed in your hands, and answer the greatest question of your generation with unshakable courage. Yes, we will keep it.